I'd been shocked to discover a human case in Brazil that involved the same mutilation injuries found on livestock David Caton claimed had suffered alien experimentation. But then I discovered a suspicious death right here in the UK, which many people, including police officers, claim has an alien connection. On a sunny afternoon in June 1980, 56-year-old miner Zigmund Adamski told his wife he was just off to the corner shop in the village of Tingley near Wakefield. As he left his house, he waved to his neighbour and set off down the road. That was the last time anyone saw Adamski alive. He just disappeared completely for 5 days. When he did turn up, it was 30 miles away in Todmorden, and Adamski was dead. His body was discovered lying face up in pouring rain at the top of a 30-foot-high pile of coal in a delivery yard. How he got there and where he'd been for the past 5 days was a mystery. The post-mortem gave the cause of death as heart failure, but it could not explain how Adamski had received the strange injuries to his body. There were a series of unusual circular burn marks on his head and neck. These burns had been covered with a kind of gel. The gel was sent for analysis, but the substance could not be identified by the forensic scientists working on the case. After hearing about the Adamski case, I returned to the village of Todmorden. My earlier visit here had focused on the evidence of animal mutilation, but this time the victim was human. Alan Godfrey, the local policeman for Todmorden, was one of the first officers at the scene where the body was discovered. He was baffled by the case evidence.
Well, the question it asks is, why would a man disappear off a street some 30 miles away from where he was found, go missing for 5-6 days, he'd eaten and he'd shaven, his shirt was missing, no identification on him, his hair had been cut very short, and the burn marks on his head and at the back of the neck, that wasn't self-inflicted.
I contacted the coroner who had presided at the Adamski inquest. He'd returned an open verdict, and in his letter confirmed that this was a very unusual case. The coroner had not ruled out murder, and many questions about Adamski's highly suspicious death remained unanswered. Despite this, Godfrey was told not to investigate the case any further. He didn't think about it again until an incident early one morning when he was out on patrol.
I myself was driving a police car, or something caught my eye 200 or 300 yards further up the road. At first I thought it might have been a bus that had gone sideways, but whatever it was, it distracted me from going where I was going to go, so I decided to go and have a look at it. As I started getting nearer and nearer, I realised that this object, it wasn't a bus, because this object was huge, and it was hovering off the ground. It wasn't actually touching the ground, and it was just hanging there. It wasn't making any noise or anything. The trees at the side of the road and all the bushes were all shaking, and all the dead leaves were coming off the road and swirling round, and I noticed the bottom half of the object was rotating. Got on the radio straight away. I couldn't get any response at all. Tried the car radio, again, nothing at all. So I'm sat there, I've got the blue lights going, I've got the hazard lights going, I'm parked right in the middle of the road. I don't know what to do. I just sat there.
PC Godfrey got out the notepad that all patrol cars carry for recording traffic accidents and started drawing the craft hovering in front of him.
I started to draw it, and then there was this, all I could describe as a big flash. It was bright white.
The next thing Godfrey realised was that he was seated in his car, driving along 100 yards further down the road. The policeman spun the car round, but the craft had vanished completely. Had he somehow been transported from standing beside the spinning craft sketching into his moving police car, or had he suffered some sort of memory loss that had wiped some aspect of the encounter from his brain?
And when I got to the police station, the inspector called me into his office, and we got in there, and he said, I want a report off you. And I said, yeah, are you kidding? He said, no. 3 policemen in Halifax had had an encounter. It's amazing, really.
Corroborating your story.
Well, it even gets better. 2 police officers in Littleborough, again at about 5 o'clock, I sat up there, and over in between 2 pylons is a diamond-shaped object. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 police officers actually, in the space of 20 minutes, have seen an unidentified flying object.
So 6 police officers who are highly trained in observing and recording evidence appeared to have all seen the same UFO. That seemed unusual, but then I met Detective Constable Gary Hesseltine, who has, for several years, kept a record of hundreds of police UFO sightings.
The database now is about 100 to 110 cases involving about 300 officers, which I think is a powerful body of evidence. These are highly qualified people, well used to reporting what they see.
Hesseltine had drawn his own conclusions about the Alan Godfrey case, its links with the Adamski death, and a cover-up.
When you join the police or you join the military, you sign the Official Secrets Act. Alan had already signed them, and yet he was told to sign a piece of paper, again, the Official Secrets Act. Initially, Alan was of the opinion, well, why do I need to sign it? I've already signed it. When they turn over the piece of paper, it said, you are not to talk about your own sighting from November, but you're not to talk about the Zigmund Adamski case. Now, I would argue that if there wasn't a UFO link before, I think it's fair comment to say that there is one by that act in itself. Because if the Zigmund Adamski case was not UFO related in any way, why would you bother to get him to sign something which was just a sudden death?
During my investigation, I'd seen some amazing things. I'd held a metal fragment that had allegedly fallen from an extraterrestrial craft. I'd seen evidence of animals apparently used for alien experimentation. I'd even come across murders where, according to some policemen, the prime suspects were from another planet. Were all of these things really going on under our noses? And if so, why wasn't it front page news? Was there a cover-up? Official denials and cover-up accusations just fuel the sheer number of conspiracy theories. And getting drawn into that world wasn't going to get me anywhere. I needed a reality check. So I decided to go and talk to the people who spend their lives watching the skies and ask them if they had any hard evidence of alien activity here on Earth. Jodrell Bank in Cheshire is Britain's biggest radio telescope. Since the mid-90s, the telescope's been involved in the Project Phoenix search for radio signals from intelligent extraterrestrial life.
This is the world's 3rd largest telescope of its type, so you don't do a lot better than that. We could pick up a mobile phone from the surface of Mars, for example.
How likely do you feel it is that there is intelligent life out there?
When people first started trying to estimate how many other civilizations there could be in our galaxy, the Milky Way, they had numbers of 100,000 to 1 million. To be honest, nowadays we're not nearly so optimistic. Some people suspect that at this particular time we might well be the only one. But more optimistic people might say there could be 10 to perhaps 100. But that does mean, on average, they'll be spread quite widely through the galaxy. And as yet, we haven't really looked very far. But by about 20 years, 2020, something like that, we'll have new and much bigger radio telescopes capable of probing the whole of our galaxy.
If there is intelligent life out there, how likely is it that we will be able to communicate?
Well, theoretically, it's totally possible. However, I do believe they would have to want to communicate to us. Some people say that there's been radiation from television transmitters and the like leaving the Earth for the last 40, 50 years. And in principle, if you weren't too far away, you could pick that up. It's not very easy. It's much more likely that we would pick up a signal that someone is deliberately aiming at planet Earth, or at least our sun.
On March the 8th, this unusual signal was received. It was passed to linguistics expert John Elliott, who's the world's leading expert on decoding language.
If I play that for you.
If aliens do attempt to contact us, Elliott is the man who will be called on to make sense of the communication.
I did analyse it, look at the structure of this analogue waveform, which it is, and it's interesting. It's not random. as you can hear from just listening to it, there's something going on there. There's got a rhythm to it.
Actually, is there any way of clarifying then where it did come from? Will we ever know?
What you can do is look at the signal, look at the data, the structure of it. Is it interesting, which this one is? It certainly looks like it's come from an intelligent origin, but it could be one of our own satellites, of course. It is very strong signal, so if you were going on logic, you would err on caution and think, well, due to its strength, it may well be one of our own. It's going to have to come millions of light years. And a transmitter, to actually send such a signal out so we receive it at that sort of strength, would have to be far beyond what we've got. But then again, the likelihood is the civilization will be far more advanced than us anyway.
So is it possible that we might end up with an exciting result just by ruling out?
Yeah, we could go through a lot of processes, and if we cannot confirm anything terrestrial, then there's the big question mark left over it.
So if scientists are searching for alien transmissions and decoding any possible communication, was it possible to imagine what visiting aliens might look like? I asked Professor Jack Cohen, the author of Evolving the Alien.
From an evolutionary point of view, how feasible are the kind of descriptions we hear of aliens?
I think that they're really very stupid, actually. Normally, people who claim to have seen aliens say, oh, they're very much like people. They're these teardrop-shaped creatures.
What makes the common image of an alien so unrealistic then?
Because it fits our prejudices and our fairy stories that we've heard about and the things we've seen on the media, and is nothing at all to do with the creatures that live on the planets of other stars.
I mean, would an alien life form necessarily be recognizable to us?
Our brains are adapted for recognizing vertebrates. We recognize faces, knees, elbows. We recognize living things. We've got a special bit of our brain that remembers living things. It's different from the bit of the brain that recognizes stones and so on, or faces. We have different bits of the brain that are specialized. Perhaps aliens are here, and we haven't got a bit of the brain that recognizes them. Perhaps they're exploiting this. They will certainly have very advanced technology. If they have come between the stars and are visiting our planet, their technology would be a lot further on than ours is. Perhaps there are aliens disguised as people, so that if their technology is very good, we simply would not know.
So according to Professor Cohen, theoretically aliens could already be here, among us, watching our every move. We just might not be aware of their presence. It's an unsettling thought, but only conjecture. I needed to get back to the one piece of concrete evidence I had, Bob White's object. I'd discovered a science professor at Mesa State University who was interested in seeing what had been found. Bob and I travelled together to the professor's home in the desert.
Bob has the object with him.
Mm-hmm.
There it is.
Well, for crying out loud.
You ever seen anything like that before?
Similar, but not like this. It's unbelievable, really is. See, this looks like an ablation ring here.
Yes.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
These particles were melting and being brought back this way and redeposited into the tail. I'd like to look at this under the microscope and see if it's crystalline. I'd really like to see that. It's the darndest thing I've ever seen. Where'd it come from?
Out of the sky.
Where did you find it?
Near Cisco.
We agreed with Professor Fandrich that we'd bring the object along to the university for testing the next day. In the meantime, Bob's team had been carrying out more of their own tests. Nuclear physicist Dr. Gibbons wanted to show me a strange effect caused by the mysterious piece of metal.
So, you've got the object here. What's this?
This is a very sensitive electromagnetic field meter, And we discovered just a few months ago that the object is giving off an electromagnetic field. You notice that there's no lights lit up, and as we bring this up to the object...
Wow. That is curious.
Well, a normal piece of metal wouldn't do this.
The alien object did seem to be more than just a hunk of inert metal, but the professor then revealed another surprise. When the team had simply placed the mystery metal object onto a piece of X-ray film, like the type used by dentists, the alien object had exposed the film without any of the equipment which is usually necessary.
Electromagnetic radiation and maybe one of the...
The X-ray revealed the object was not the same all through, and that there was a strange double inner core.
It's a real, genuine exposure, 48 hours, and it matches the idea that there's two parts to the object.
It's like the core of the thing.
Right, but it's emitting a beam, a very, very high energy beam.
Could it not just be that the core of it is some kind of radioactive material?
We think that the in the what we'll call the humps is some sort of a power unit.
Was there some kind of power unit hidden inside the metal, and if so, what was it for? After the break, we put the alien object under the microscope and find out what it's made of.